Hi God. Thank you so much for just today, God, for giving us another day to do this life with you, God, for waking us up. We know that so many people did not get that opportunity, God. So we just thank you for having more for us to do. And thank you that this is one of those things, God. I thank you for Natalie and the fact that she's here and just willing to share her testimony, God. I thank you that she's able to share her testimony, that you have taken her through so much to be the beautiful woman of God sitting in front of us today, God. And I'm just so excited to hear just what you've done in her life. I thank you for bringing us here. I thank you for every single person who is watching. I pray that this inspires them, that gives them hope and gives them whatever they need to further their relationship with you, God. I pray that you will help us to say what we need to say and not say what we don't need to say, God.
Yeah.
And that this time will ultimately bring you glory. We love you so much. Thank you for loving us more than we'll ever understand or deserve. And in Jesus' name we pray, amen.
Amen.
Amen, Natalie. Yay,
Yes.
you're here. I'm so excited.
Me too.
And I'm excited you're here too. Welcome. Welcome to God What the Heck, Hopeful Stories for When Life Sucks. And we are here. I thank you for tuning in, whether you are on iTunes or Spotify, whether you are on YouTube. If you are listening to the audio podcast, I actually want to encourage you to join us on YouTube, because that is part of the magic, is you get to see us on video and kind of interact. I know. And so, yeah, come on over. Also, if you didn't know, God What the Heck is not just a podcast. God What the Heck is also a book. It is a book of devotionals for when life sucks. So we are trying to get you through the hard times over here. And so if you want to grab that, it is on Amazon. Also, if you would like a personal Bible study, the link is in the description with this episode as well. We will talk more about that a little bit later. And today we have one of my great friends. I am so excited for you guys to meet her. Her name is Natalie. Yay! Welcome.
I'm so excited to be here.
I know. I'm so excited. I'm so excited that Natalie is here. Want to remind everyone of our theme scripture. And it's one of my favorites. And I know you like it too, because we've talked about it before. But it is Revelation 12:11. It says, they triumphed over him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony. They did not love their lives so much as to shrink from death. And I love this scripture because it does take a lot of courage and boldness to share your testimony, but that is how we will defeat Satan at the end of the day, through the blood of the Lamb, through Jesus, and through telling about what he has done in our lives. So thank you for being here.
Absolutely.
Oh my gosh, so I could not wait for you to come because I really want to tell you something.
Okay, I'm like nervous, but excited.
No, I know. Don't be nervous.
Why do you want to
Okay, so me and Natalie went to the Taylor Swift movie, the Eras Tours movie.
Yeah.
And since then, I have been just listening to the Eras Tour, like the playlist.
Set list, yeah.
The set list. And that you sent me, actually. And so I went on Spotify or on iTunes, the most played list for the year. Why is Taylor my number one?
Wait, that's kind of surprising.
No, you know what it is because I don't listen to music all that much.
Oh, okay.
And so, but now since we went to that movie,
It's like all you listen to.
no, it's literally been on repeat. Like when I'm doing my makeup, when I'm driving somewhere.
That's so funny. I don't use Spotify, so I don't get the Spotify Wrapped, but I'm kind of disappointed because everyone who is a fan of hers is like, I'm in the top 1% of her listeners. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure I would be there if I used Spotify, but I don't.
Wait, does iTunes do that? Because I don't use Spotify either,
so.
but mine is, I said Spotify, but mine is actually on iTunes. It showed me like my top 5 listeners or top 5 listened like artists and then albums. She's not in any of my albums or any of my songs, but just overall.
I mean, I definitely know she's my top. I mean, the storage on my phone This is very telling of my personality. But the storage on my phone, all my music is like in like millibytes or whatever, except Taylor Swift is like the only one with gigabytes.
Oh, well.
Literally gigabytes of storage. So yeah, that's how you know.
Natalie is a Swiftie.
I am a Swiftie.
And she is
tried and
converting
true.
me. I know. Yeah. No, I love it. But I am really excited to talk today about just what God has done in your life. And
me too.
You are literally one of the best people I know, and so I'm really excited.
I feel the same way.
Okay, so let's get into it. You were raised in Arizona, right? Sort of.
Yeah, I was raised in a lot of different places. But I like to say, like, pretty much 5th grade on and a little bit before then. So I guess, you would consider that raised.
Yeah, a little bit. But tell us a little bit about your childhood, like how it started out.
Yeah. Oh, man. Okay, well, my childhood was a little bit tumultuous, but I was born in Atlanta, actually. Not a lot of people know that. I know, and they have that reaction. That's literally the reaction. But I was born in Atlanta, specifically like Kennesaw, Georgia. And my family just went through some things. My mom, she, fell into addiction, and she was a nurse at the time. So I don't want to, paint this picture of her like she was on the streets, an addict. That was absolutely actually not the case. She was very much, had a house. We had a house in Georgia. She had 3 kids. She was married, had all the things. But that was just something that was prominent in the hospital she worked at.
Wow.
Yeah. So, staff started, using the juice in the hospital.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Wow.
So,
that's not something you hear about very often. Like, it's very, like, a high functioning addict.
Yeah.
Of not street drugs, but pharmaceuticals.
Yeah. Wow. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Which can lead to, the street. But that's, I have, addiction in my family, and that's the level of addiction that's kind of been, and I've struggled with that myself too, which, is part of my testimony, but we'll get to that later. But so because that happened, I only share that. I love my mom. She's great. But I just share that because it did kind of implode our life a little bit. She went to rehab to get help. She actually, reported herself and turned herself in because she was very afraid, and she had just had my youngest brother. And so she wanted to be here for her kids. And her best friend had actually passed away, had overdosed. So that kind of sparked that in her. And so, she went to rehab. And so my brothers and I, we kind of got tossed back and forth between family members in different states.
Oh, that's why you moved around.
Yes.
Okay.
So that brought me to Arizona to live with my grandma. And then, my mom, when she got out of rehab, my parents came and we actually moved to Arizona. And then eventually they got divorced, went to Texas. And then while in Texas, I was just with my dad. And eventually he asked me, would you like to go live with your mom? She's doing better. She's stable. She's, ready for her children to come. Yeah. And I agreed, what daughter doesn't, want to live with your mom. Yeah. So, and not my dad and 2 brothers. So, well. I mean, I love them, but I was like, boys everywhere, I need some cleanliness. I need some, So, right. So, I went and lived with my mom, and then that was kind of where I really planted myself. And my mom and dad were very kind to allow me to have that stability. Once at that point I was in 5th grade, so I was old enough to say, I do not want to keep moving around. Yeah. So, but anyways, all of that, my parents were, they had their faith, they had their religious practices, but through just all of the transitions and the tumultuous things that went on, just in my childhood, I could kind of just tell that I don't think this is it. Yeah.
Okay, we got a faith, but our faith isn't working. Yeah. If it's supposed to do something with our life, it's not doing it.
I just remember thinking, I would feel God when I went to church, if that's what you want to say, I like felt his presence and everything, but I didn't really feel that at home. And I just kind of knew, and I think my parents, they struggled with their faith as well, or, they struggled with certain times in their life not doing the righteous thing. And so it was just kind of evident to me, like, something's off. I don't know if this is exactly what God wants, but I was always pretty curious as a kid to know him and really wanted to have a relationship with him. And I remember like going to the altar calls at church, and they would ask, if anyone wanted to pray. And as me and my little kid self, I'd always like run up and be like, I want to pray. And someone would pray over me. And so I always loved Bible study camp. Like that was my favorite thing. Was
Vacation Bible School
in Texas.
Oh wow.
Where we had like a swimming pool with a slide and horses. But actually my favorite thing was the Bible study. Like it was just an intimate small group Bible study we would do. And I was probably 9, and I just remember that actually being my favorite part of camp.
Oh wow.
Which was I think that like reminded me as I got older a lot of like, no, I love the Bible, you know, because I had that opportunity.
I mean, that's saying a lot, the fact that you had horses and a slide.
And me, I like horses.
But the Bible study was still your fave.
Yeah,
like, that's some stiff competition
it.
there.
I know. So I kind of just, grew up knowing of God, but I don't think I really ever saw what following God was supposed to look like, from my home. And of course we had, also Texas is like the Bible Belt. Yes. So everyone like has this strong belief in God, but you can tell and see that their lives don't always match what the Bible says. So I grew up similarly, like Seventh-day Adventist, and we went to church and stuff like that, but then you could tell things were going on behind closed doors, and it kind of wasn't really helping with what we were doing here. It's like, okay, what are we doing? As you settled in Arizona when you were in 5th grade, and then what did your life kind of look like from there, growing up in Arizona? It was just my mom and I for a while, and I there was still kind of custody things and things with my parents' divorce that were going on. And so my dad living in Texas, and my 2 brothers at that time were both in Texas with my dad. We had all moved there together. So, custody and things like that kind of created definitely a strain in my life, like a struggle. And I definitely, what's it called when you internalize? I should know this.
You buried it.
There's a lot of things. I actually just had like a 2-hour conversation with my dad about this, but I internalized a lot of things from that time. But, what I remember from it the most isn't that. What I remember is like hanging out with my mom, and we would watch American Idol, and we had all these little Natalie mom traditions, and I would actually go to her like Narcotics Anonymous meetings with her, and we would kind of make it a thing. It was like every Monday, and then we'd go out to our like favorite restaurant after. And so it was honestly what I remember the most is that like quality time with my mom that I didn't really have because I lived with my grandma, and so that was like, that's what I remember the most is just having that. And then my brother moved with us, and then other crazy things just happened. I don't want to like spill all my family's tea, respectfully, but yeah, it had its ups and downs. I think living with my mom and kind of just getting older too, I think God kind of was removed a little bit from the picture. Like my dad was definitely the one who like would push us to go to church. And so my mom, we didn't really do that. Like we didn't really go to church or anything, but she would, pray in her closet all the time. I'd be like, Mom, can you, what are you doing? And she'd be like, leave me alone, I'm praying. I'd be like, okay. So I just always knew like not to bother her. And, so, she still had her practices, and she would still talk about God a lot, but definitely wasn't like as strong as when I was a little bit younger. So, yeah, and then of course I just from that point on, you know, I got to middle school, got to high school, and that's when things get crazy.
Oh well, isn't that always the term? Like high school, like is rough.
High school
like
was rough, and I remember people saying like, "These will be the best years of your life," and I was always like, "I don't know about that."
Listen, you couldn't pay me enough to go back to high school.
No,
I would never do high school over again. It is horrible. You like get to high school and all of a sudden it's like every single demon just comes in you. Like you're literally
and like
you have all the feelings. You're going through all of like you're super emo. Everyone's super mean. Emo. You're just trying to figure out. Nothing makes sense.
No, I feel like all your flaws are on display.
Yeah.
Like,
and people will point them out.
Yeah,
like,
and they're at the worst that they probably are ever going to be.
No, literally.
Because of just what developmental stage you're in. Like, I was listening to another podcast and they described adolescence so perfectly, where it's like you're not young enough to be a kid, but you're not old enough to be an adult, so you're in just this horrible awkward stage of like
transition. Who am I?
Of figuring out where you belong, where you fit in, and wanting to do the adult things, but you ain't ready.
No, period. Not at all.
Even though you think you are,
right?
Which I did, very much so. But I also had, I mean, my whole life people said I was more mature than my age, just because of, you know, even living with my mom, like I was her best friend, you know, like there's a lot of things that like I had to grow up very quickly, you know, in my household, and I'm the oldest of my brothers and I, so you relate.
Same.
Yeah.
Relatable.
Yeah. So there's just a lot of like quick growing up I had to do, so I which, you know, now as an adult I kind of wish that I had more of that actual childhood. But yeah, you know.
Yeah. How did you kind of start to live that out as far as like in high school and things took a turn inwardly, but then outwardly, like how did that affect your personal life?
Like the things that I got into in high school? Well, it didn't really start until like my freshman year. I was actually kind of always like the good kid. And then my freshman year, my best friend passed away.
Is that your freshman year in high school or college?
In high school.
Oh, okay.
He passed away, and he was actually, thanks. It is what it is. But he actually had like a big faith in God too. So I was actually very pulled closer to God because of his faith. And he would read his Bible every day. He would like in the summers he would go on mission trips, and I just was the closest to him. And so going into high school, I really clung to my relationship with him. And then he passed away. And I think at that point, I just did not understand. Like, I didn't understand God's plan in that. And I remember specifically someone asked me, like, do you believe in God after that? And I said, not really. Like, I know some things out there, but it's probably just like the universe.
Oh, wow.
You know? Yeah. So I became very like agnostic as a teenager in the very early stages of high school. Yeah. Which is, you know, not maybe the time to throw caution to your morals. There they go. Any moral standing that you have. And because he was, you know, my best friend, like I truly ditched any other like friendship that we had, and I instead started hanging out with this different group of kids, and one of them who I, you know, became best friends with, she had a similar shared experience with a best friend passing away, and so her and I got really close. But you know, they were different, and they weren't like my goody two-shoe friends that I had previously. And so I, you know, I think outwardly I just started engaging in a lot of reckless teenage behavior. I mean, I'd shoplift, you know, eventually. And I think a lot of these things were like slow to come. Like I never just was, you know, jumping into these things. It was a very like slow process, as Satan will do.
Listen, it is a slippery slope.
Yeah, it's a
It was just
slippery slope.
What do they call it? Like gateway actions?
Yes.
Like there's gateway drugs,
I
there's
remember
gateway behavior.
rolling my eyes when people would be like, marijuana is a gateway drug. And now I'm like, marijuana is a gateway drug. Do not do it.
Listen.
It is. And yeah, I mean, I started smoking marijuana. I started drinking, hanging out with people that were more promiscuous. And a lot of the friend group I hung out with, I honestly didn't know them very well. I didn't feel very close to them, but they were just in my proximity.
Yeah.
And it was a lot of dudes.
Yeah.
And my best friend and I were not really the promiscuous type, but we would hear how they would talk about those girls that we were friends with.
Wow.
And it was just rough.
Yeah.
You could not pay me to go back.
What did I just hear? Like
I know, but it also started to put like a bad taste in my mouth towards other girls, which, I think now that I'm older and, I definitely wouldn't want to judge someone else based on those things that they did when they were a kid. But I remember as a kid, I was hardcore judging, but because of these things that the guys would say, so it was definitely an interesting like experience, but I definitely prided myself on my purity, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
I wasn't 100%, but in regards to that, I wasn't like going around, and
you
so
weren't out there.
Yeah, I wasn't out there like that in high school.
You're like, in high school.
In high school, let me clarify.
No, I mean, and that's real, because I think, I kind of was that person who was like, okay, well, I'm not gonna really do anything, and then when I started doing stuff, it was like, okay, I'm all the way in. You know? And
I can relate.
Yeah, I think we're similar in that way. In that, like, we're either in or we're out.
Yes.
We're not halfway doing very much.
No, nothing is done that way. And that's why I think too, like when I say these things happened slowly, the firsts happened slowly, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But once the firsts were done, it was full steam ahead. Yeah. So, the first shot maybe happened beyond when my friends had their first shots. But once I started, it was, okay, we're in this now. This is who we are. This is what we're doing.
Yeah.
And I did start, having just relationships with guys. I wasn't necessarily promiscuous or anything like that, but I did start, having just relationships with guys, and some toxic ones, some hurtful ones. And that also kind of led me to just comparing myself to other people, and then having like an eating disorder. And my eating disorder in high school was so extreme that I remember just constant like intrusive thoughts of wanting to hurt myself, so much anxiety. Like I had so much anxiety around food. If I ate, I would literally like hyperventilate. I'd hear my my heart beating so fast until I like was able to purge. And I remember my best friend, the one who I had that shared experience of losing someone with, she was the only one I told about it. And I remember her crying, and because she saw the change in me was so drastic, like all my joy was taken. And I think, it was more than just the eating disorder, but it truly felt like I was possessed by a demon. Just like my thoughts just would not stop about wanting to hurt myself. And so I struggled with that for like a few years, in addition to this friendship pseudo relationship I had, where it was just very toxic, very damaging to my self-esteem. And not all on one person. I think me being a kid and them being semi-kid too, like we both caused damage. And that in tune with the eating disorder and using drugs and drinking alcohol, I just remember feeling so low. And I remember just wanting this guy's attention all the time, and when I didn't have it, those intrusive thoughts would just constantly tell me, it's you suck, you're not worthy of his love or his attention, something's wrong with you. And so that would kind of even feed into those other self-destructive behaviors, you know?
Because if you're the problem, then you have to take it into your hands to fix it.
Yeah.
And then you're trying to fix it in these ways that are destructive to yourself.
Yeah. And I think, you know, it's like, if you're the thing that needs to be fixed, what is the solution? It's to go away. You know, it's to remove yourself.
Wow.
Like if there's no hope, you know, which I didn't have any.
Yeah.
And so it's like the messages I'm hearing from the people in my life and the relationships I had, you know, aside from my best friend at the time.
Yeah.
And just in extension to using and drinking and diving into those things and then harming myself by not eating and, you know, my eating disorder in and of itself was just so damaging to the point where I just remember I was having like a little mental breakdown over this guy. And I remember being in like fetal position in my bed crying, and I grabbed a bottle of ibuprofen, which of course, you know, everyone's like, ibuprofen, what's that going to do? But if you take a whole bottle, it's going to do something. And that was my plan. And I just held it. And I remember being in like fetal position crying. And I was talking out loud as I cried. And I don't think I realized I was praying, but I was praying.
Wow.
Yeah. And again, like I had been agnostic up until this point, like not really acknowledging God as God.
Yeah.
You know, kind of fluid in my beliefs, and definitely, obviously, my morals were slipping, and, you know, nothing was off the table anymore. And yeah, so I just remember praying, and I just remember asking for peace. Like, I was just like, I don't want to be in pain anymore. I'm in physical pain. I'm in emotional pain, and I don't want to be in pain anymore. I just want to be at peace. And then like about 2 minutes later, I realized that I was no longer in fetal position and I was no longer crying. And my body was just like peacefully in my bed. And I didn't realize that when I moved positions.
Yeah.
I just eventually was like, oh, I'm like, there's no more tears. When did I straighten out? What's going on?
Wow.
And literally
that is so deep.
Yeah. Literally my thought was, God just answered my prayer.
That is so deep.
And I didn't even know I was praying to God.
Yeah.
You know, and from that moment on, I was like, oh, he's real.
Yeah.
You know, and I never questioned, you know, that sense. Like, I was like, he's real. He heard me. He just essentially saved my life. I don't know if I would have gone through with that or not.
Yeah.
But, like, he's healed this pain that I just felt, you know.
Yeah. In the moment.
Immediately.
Wow.
And I just remember that kind of being my, just the road that kind of led me to actually believing in him and seeking him, you know. And that was probably actually like senior year of high school.
Oh,
so
wow.
It took, that's what I'm saying.
It took a little while.
Things slowly rolled, you know, into where they were. It wasn't like all the pain just happened at once. It was like, I slowly gave in to these things to the point where the pain built up so much that was the point to where I was at.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that happened it was like my senior year, I remember. And then I remember just being curious about God. Mm-hmm. Like, I didn't start reading my Bible and I didn't start going to church, but I just remember I would talk about him a lot. And the other kids at my school that identified as Christian, I remember, I mean, sadly, we'd even be like at parties, or we'd be at a party at my house. Yeah. And I remember I had a friend who decided he wasn't drinking anymore because he was a Christian. And I was like so curious. And I was like, so tell me everything you know. And, you know.
Like, how do you do that?
Yeah.
Like, why?
I was just so intrigued and impressed, you know, by him. I mean, he was still, you know, there. But
baby steps.
Yeah, baby steps. But I just remember being very like impressed, and I was like, I want to be like that. Like, I want to love God that much. I want to know him that well.
Yeah.
But I honestly did not know how to get there. Like, I was still a kid. I graduated high school when I was 17.
Oh, wow.
You know, like I was a child.
Yeah.
So as much as I did not think I was.
Right.
So I, from that point on, just kind of got more curious. And I think just the fact that my heart was like opened to God really helped, like I think we all need that moment, Acts 17:26-28 says that God puts opportunities in our life so that we'll seek him.
Yep.
And I truly think that was the opportunity where I prayed. Like I sought him, but I didn't quite like reach out and grab him yet.
Yeah.
And so that took a little bit of time for me to get to that point. But I really needed someone to show me the way.
Yeah. No, that's beautiful. And I think it's crazy because so many times on this podcast, we hear things starting with prayer. Mm-hmm. Things starting with people just like not even knowing that they need to pray, and then they just find themselves praying, or they just make the decision to call out to God in a moment.
Yeah.
And it just blows my mind every time that God really does respond.
Yeah.
Like he really does meet us where we're at.
Yeah.
And just like,
absolutely.
listen, I'm going to answer your prayer so that I'm here, so that you're not alone. And that's just so beautiful. I never get sick of hearing that story.
Yeah.
Of how many times that happens.
I love that. Yeah.
So what would you say was the moment that did finally cause you to like reach out to God? What was your God, what the heck moment where you're just like, okay, I need you, period.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I didn't really change any of my behavior after that night.
Yeah.
I still used drugs. I still drank. I still did the things. And I think, honestly, it was later on it was my freshman year of college. And I had spent a summer in Louisiana with my cousin and his wife. And I remember they would like pray at the table before they ate. And they were just very family oriented and God oriented. And I remember just thinking, wow, I really love that. And the night I came home from Louisiana before starting college, my friend and I used drugs, and I used way too much.
Wow.
And I remember it was basically ecstasy. So, an overdose isn't going to like bring you down because it's an upper, but the come down is very depressing and like extreme. And I remember using it, and I did something I said I would never do. I had snorted it. And
what's the difference? Sorry, maybe that's like a obvious question, but like obviously like snorting it, I know what that is, but like what's the difference? Why was that the thing you would never do?
I think it just made me feel like, kind of like what I said, like my mom and like the people in my family were never like those like street users. And I don't know, I still had this like mental image of like, I'm not an addict and I don't do this, and I'm a successful person going to college. And I don't know, I think to me that seemed a little bit too far into it.
Yeah, like now I'm a real druggie because I'm like doing this.
Yeah, because now I'm
just
snorting
taking it pretty.
Yeah, but like to be fair, that's just I think our perception. Like any of it is bad. You know what I mean?
For sure.
Yeah, just because you like take it in pill form or whatever, it's gonna do the same thing. But that was actually the first time I had even used that drug too. So I think that was also like a degree that I crossed, or a line that I crossed.
Yeah, I always wanted to try that. BC, before Christ.
Yes.
Clearly. But I was always scared too, because someone told me it would cause holes in your brain or something. I don't know.
Probably.
I don't know if that's actually true, but it kept me from trying it.
Yeah. No, I'm glad you didn't. I honestly, I volunteer, and we have like a chemical recovery ministry in our church, and I volunteer, and in it we go around and we share like what our drug of choice is, meaning if we ever walked away from God, what would we go back to? And saying that helps keep us here, you know what I mean? Like it's not a glorifying thing. It's like, hey, what is the thing that like you wouldn't be okay if you left God? And mine is that. Is definitely ecstasy, or it was Molly in particular, which is a pure form, I think. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I think it is. But
That's, I don't know. I could be wrong. Is that the one that's like rampant on TikTok?
I don't know.
Oh, yeah. Me neither.
I don't watch TikTok like that.
Dang. Okay. Sorry.
Especially like drug TikTok.
I know. It's probably a good thing. Yeah. Probably a good thing.
It wasn't around when I was in high school, which makes me feel old.
Amen.
But
sorry.
Yeah. No, I don't know. It's definitely a popular one.
Yeah.
I think people call it like the happy one, and which is how my friend convinced me to use it, because she was like, you'll never feel this type of happiness. And I was like,
Dang.
Well, sold.
Yeah.
That's all you had to say.
Right.
Which is kind of ironic given that
Yeah.
God literally says, seek me and you will find happiness. But yeah, I remember that being the specific thing that she said that sold me. Because again, I didn't just jump into things, I didn't do them without really thinking about them. Not that my thinking was right. But,
but it was happening.
But at least I did my research. And I honestly was like, what am I comfortable? Am I comfortable risking holes in my brain? For happiness? Sure. I'll do that,
Yeah.
So, although I don't think I knew that part. but
it could be untrue, and it was just like God allowed that person to lie to me so that I wouldn't do it, because based on my past, like that probably would have been the drug that hooked me, because I was constantly chasing the high, constantly chasing the happiness that would distract me from all the feelings I felt on the inside. It wasn't the outside stuff, because I actually liked my life. My life was awesome outside, but it was the inside pain that I was trying to like numb away.
Absolutely. Same. I mean, I think if anyone tells you you need this artificial thing to make you happy and you jump at the chance to do it, you clearly aren't doing very well internally. You're missing something. Or you think you are, So I did. I was like, let's do it. And she convinced me not just to do it, but to also snort it so that it would like work faster. And I did. And I, the whole experience of it was one thing, but specifically the next day, because it keeps you up. So like I was up till the early hours in the morning, and then went to probably like 6 a.m., fell asleep, did things I wasn't proud of during those hours, but like 6 a.m. went to sleep and didn't wake up till 6 p.m. the next day.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I don't even remember the daylight when I like think about this memory, because there was no daylight.
Right.
And I remember waking up just sobbing, and I was just like so sad. I felt lonely. I felt so many things, even though she was right there. And I remember her kind of freaking out, like at my reaction, and her saying, oh, I gave you too much. I gave you too much. Wow. And I remember telling her, like, no, I don't care. I don't want to do this anymore. I want to follow God. That's what I said.
That's what you woke up
That's what I woke up. I woke up
Wow.
crying, and I was sad for many things, but I remember just thinking, like, I don't want to be this. I don't want to live this life. I don't want to be this person. Like, I just want God. And she was kind of taken aback, because I don't think I'd really talked with her about that before.
Yeah.
And she kind of was still like, how do I help you? Because I gave you too much drugs.
She's still freaking out.
Yeah. And I'm like, you can't help me. Only the Lord. And so it wasn't so much me saying, God, what the heck? It was more like, Natalie, what the heck? Like, go to God, what are you doing? And I mean, sad to say, like, even after that, I didn't 100% change, which I truly do believe it was a spiritual like moment for me. But it was also, I mean, I had all these chemicals like that had flooded my brain now leaving. So the depression part of it was like very chemical as well. But it is funny how in that God used that moment, despite, my whole history of being so self-destructive, instead of thinking like, wow, I suck, or, letting these chemicals create this narrative or all these thoughts in my head, the one thing I said was, I need God. like, I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah, because that could have gone the complete opposite way, where
it could have.
I am so sad and just like, let me quit this pain for good.
Yeah.
That could have easily gone that way.
Absolutely.
But by the grace of God, you realize I need God. Like, wow. Yeah. That's amazing.
And I literally remember too, part of the reason I was sad was because of this, like, you know, pseudo relationship I had. And I remember I got in the car and I started driving to his house after this, like, awakening. And then I was like, you know what? No. And I turned around and I went back home, and I kind of felt better after that. And I just remember, like, digging in my closet to find my little teenage study Bible and just, like, putting it next to my bed. I didn't read it. But I was like,
baby steps.
This is the
it's by the bed.
I'm keeping this here because I'm going to read it, you know, is what was my intention.
Yeah.
So that would be definitely, I think, my God, what the heck moment.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. Or
Oh
Natalie,
my gosh. No, Natalie, what the heck? I love that so much.
Yeah.
So what did finally get you to, like, change?
Yeah. Honestly, I mean, again, I was 17.
Yeah,
I was
so
about to
young.
be 18. And even though I had parents, like, I didn't really, from their example, I honestly had no idea how to have a relationship with God.
Yeah.
Like, truly.
Yeah.
And I didn't feel, for some reason, I was like, I'm not asking them.
Yeah.
Like, I don't feel like that's the answer.
Yeah.
And so it took a little while. This was in the summer before college. And I didn't really start pursuing my relationship with God until January of that year, when I started college. And honestly, the turning point was just that someone offered to teach me.
Wow.
Literally.
Yeah.
Like, I would have just continued walking around aimlessly. I mean, I also grew up kind of thinking you just believe and you're okay. You know, so I didn't really have any urgency.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't even know smoking marijuana was, like, wrong in God's eyes.
Yeah.
I really didn't, because so many people had told me it's from the earth, like, it's fine. And I was like, yeah, you're right. Yeah. I mean, I even had, you know, my brother and I, we would, you know, smoke in our house, and my parents, like, let us because they didn't want us on the street. So we were actually, like, the house to come to. Or apartment.
Yeah.
Not a nice house. we weren't like that. But all of our friends, people would come to our house to smoke. Wow. And we would be like the hosts.
Yeah.
And I remember one kid came over with, like, an apple and some, like, hemp that he would light on fire to light the apple. And he, in his head, he truly believed that it was okay to smoke the marijuana because everything he used was from the earth.
Oh.
But, like, we were condemned for using a pipe. Or, like, yeah, it was strange, but
That's funny. I don't mean to laugh at that.
no,
but
it sticks with me. I do laugh because I'm like, that's just, like, the things that teens just think in their head. And it's just like, it's okay if you do it from an apple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I remember, like, just honestly though, but those teachings influenced me.
Yeah.
Like, the things I heard from other people. And I had always, no one ever told me I needed to, like, do more than believe in God, you know, or pray to him or seek him. And so, I thought everything was kosher. Like, I was like,
and you
everything's
would,
good.
Just eventually figure it out.
Yeah, I
like,
mean,
I need God. Okay, I'm gonna read my Bible eventually, but, like,
it's funny
because
because intellectually I knew I needed to change, and emotionally because I had that moment, but I didn't know how to change. Also, like, I was an addict.
Yeah.
So even if I knew I shouldn't be doing this stuff anymore, like, I knew I shouldn't be using Molly.
Yeah.
Even though I knew that, I didn't really truly, like, understand what change looked like, or what it was, or what changing for God even looked like.
Yeah.
And again, like, I didn't really have any examples of that. And so finally in college, I was, like, walking to my friend's dorm to study, and someone invited me to a Bible discussion. And I remembered the camp in Texas and how much I loved Bible study. And I was like, I would love to do this.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, because full circle, right? I remembered how much I loved it. And I obviously wanted to know him because I had all those, you know, the really low moment and my God, what the heck moment.
Yeah.
And I had, you know, like everything in me was like, yes, absolutely. But ironically, I was high at the time.
Oh, well.
Yeah.
That's okay.
And so, but being high, the girl who invited me didn't think I was interested because my affect was just so flat.
Yeah.
But internally, I was like freaking out. I was like, did this really just happen? Like, this girl's from God. And like, I was so excited. And I ended up, like, I had promised my friend, I had bailed on him so many times. And I was like, I'm so sorry. I can't join tonight. I have to go study. I promised my friend. And I walked to his dorm, and the whole way there, I'm like just thinking about the Bible study. Yeah. And I go in, and I'm like pacing around his room, and I'm like, I have to leave. Aww. And he was like, what? Like, he was very upset because I promised him. But I was like, someone just invited me to a Bible study, and I just have to go. And so I left, and I went back to the Bible study.
Oh, wow.
And it had been over.
Yeah.
But I got to meet everyone involved, and, you know, I got to, like, build relationships with them. And so we scheduled, like, another Bible study, you know, and had one. And the girls really taught me the Bible and taught me what change looked like. And, I mean, I swear it was like seeing for the first time. Like, I truly had no idea.
Yeah.
Even if I had tried to read the Bible on my own, I don't think I would have changed because I had no idea what I was reading. I mean,
like, wait, what did I just read?
I know I'm in college, but I would read something and they'd be like, so what do you get from it? And I would say what I got, and they'd be like, oh, well, actually, let's read it again. And I was like, and then I'd read it and I'd be like, that was very straightforward. How did I not get that the first time?
Yeah.
But I mean, I truly, like, the turning point for me was just the fact that someone reached out and taught me, because otherwise, like, I didn't know what to do. Like, I didn't have any true message being taught to me throughout my life, you know? And I probably would have just continued walking around thinking, like, I mean, I hope I change one day, maybe when I get older, but I just love God, and that's good.
Yeah.
You know, but, I mean, you know, I studied the Bible. I realized what God, you know, desires for us and his commandments, which, I mean, like, you know, because you're the same, but I was very much like a free spirit. Like,
whatever I want to do, I'm going to do.
Exactly. And so I hated rules.
Whatever feels good.
Yeah. And so discovering those things in the Bible.
You're like, wait, time out.
I was like,
I gotta do what?
Wait a minute. Yeah. And I remember wrestling with certain things. And I think, honestly, smoking marijuana was like one of the hardest things for me to give up.
Yeah.
Everything else, I was like, you know what, fine. But this one thing, I was like, because I honestly, at that point, hadn't been sober in 2 years. I had smoked marijuana.
Like ever?
Every day for 2 years.
Wow.
Like, I would go to college, and then the high would wear off, and I would go back home to smoke. So like you said, you know, you were like trying to numb the internal pain. Yeah. I mean, I had no idea what was going on in here, because I just was covering it up all the time. So, you know, to really embrace purity of heart, mind, spirit by purifying myself and giving up marijuana, that was like a huge struggle for me. Yeah. And I remember thinking, God, I don't know if I'll be happy without this.
Wow.
Yeah. And that was the reason why it was really hard for me to give up, because I just was like clinging to what I thought made me happy.
Yeah.
You know?
I love how you said, like, the purity of mind, heart, body, and spirit. Like, we don't think of drugs in that way as impurity in terms of, because when you are taking them, you're covering up impurity in your mind, heart, soul, and body, you know, and you're inviting more impurity in to mask this impurity.
Exactly. Yeah, that's so
and
true.
so I don't know if I've ever thought of it that way.
Yeah, it just kind of came out. I don't really think I had either.
Yeah. Look at the Lord. Look at the Lord. I don't know who needed to hear that, but listen, that was for you.
Yeah. But I mean, that was also why I think I didn't want to like ever snort drugs or use like a white powder substance, because I felt impure. Like it made me feel dirty. I couldn't even watch Breaking Bad in high school because my brother would watch it and I'd be like, I can't be in here, because it made me feel guilty, because I knew, I was like, I mean, my life wasn't that intense. Like no one was making, meth or anything, but it made me feel like I knew I related to them. Yeah. And I didn't like that,
It made you uncomfortable.
Yeah. So there was this sense of like, I did want to be pure. Like I wanted to be pure before God. And I knew what was making me impure and contaminating my spirit. Yeah. And so, but I just remember struggling, thinking, I don't think I'll be happy without this. Which again, like happiness was kind of the thing I wanted the most,
Yeah. So what did like this change look like? Like obviously you studied the Bible, you said you wrestled to really give it up. So they called you to give it up.
Yeah, the Bible did.
Yeah, the Bible did. And then but what did that look like? Like the process of it? Yeah.
A lot of internal work. Yeah, honestly, which I'm kind of grateful that again, like full circle, I kind of am grateful for the way I was raised, because I think I did have enough maturity to be able to do some introspective work, because I needed that. And in this like chemical recovery ministry that I was talking about, I joined it. And in it, you need to journal.
Before even you were a Christian?
Yeah, before I was a Christian.
Wow.
Because I knew, I made this commitment to God. I knew if I wasn't sober, like when I committed myself to Christ, I probably would like not actually ever be committed to Christ. Like, yeah. And that was also a fear of like, if I give up marijuana and I commit myself to Christ, is it gonna last? Like, am I gonna go back? That was a huge fear. And I remember saying, Jesus, I don't want to do this if it's not forever. Like, I'm not going to do this if it's not a forever decision. But I was very
Come on, Nat. I love that.
And again, like, I don't know where this Natalie came from, because I was never like that. Yeah, I was a very fleety person. And so for me, but I was loyal to the people I loved. Like, I've always been that way, you know, but I still was kind of like, I just knew. I was like, I see the truth in the Bible. I see what it's going to take. And if I'm not ready to do it, I won't, because I will not do it unready and then leave God. Yeah. That will not be me. Yeah. So
but in order to do it, I need to be sober.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because again, like my mind was so warped. Like it had been just, all of the things I told you about, like everything impacted my thoughts and my mind. And so I needed, Romans, renew your mind. I needed that renewal. Yeah. And so in the chemical recovery ministry, you're supposed to journal about the instances that you used. And I'm a very like vision person. Like I see things, especially memories. I have very vivid memories. And so some of these memories of using, especially Molly, were like, I consider them the best times of my life. Wow. And so the process of journaling, you write down these really great times that you experienced, but part of the journal prompts were to also write down any consequences, and not just consequences of like, oh, what are all the bad things that happened, but just like, what are the after effects? They didn't even specify negative. It just was, what happened and then what were the effects. And as I'm processing the effects, of course, negative ones come up, And so I have like I'm writing down all these times of like the happiest times in my life. And then I'm writing down the effects. And then we'd share the journal with the group. And so the group, they would kind of challenge me like, okay, well, what about this? What about this? And so I would rewrite it. And I would rewrite it until I really saw the truth of what happened clearly. And it was just facts, no emotion, like very detached from what had happened, you know, not saying this is the greatest night of my life, but really just saying like, this is what I did, this is what happened, and then these were the effects of it. And all these like favorite moments of my life, my favorite experiences, turned out to actually be some of the worst moments of my life.
Wow.
And when I really thought about what I valued and what God valued, because by this point I had been embracing God's values and valuing them myself.
Yeah.
You know, and when I really thought about those values that were personal to God and to me now, I looked at those moments with such a different perspective, you know, and some of the things that I regret doing the most to other people and to myself, but other people too, are the things that happened when I was using.
Yeah.
And I think that just like doing that work really flipped it for me of like, oh yeah, I don't want to be that person again.
Right.
Which I said at the beginning, you know?
Right.
But I'd kind of forgotten that. And so it took a lot of like introspective work, but then at the same time, it took just commitment. Like, because after that point, I just had to make a decision, like, what do I want? And I remember talking to my best friend who was an atheist, well, is an atheist, you know, still to this day. And I remember I was also kind of like messing around with these two guys at the time. And I remember being very frustrated with how those relationships were going. And even though I was, you know, on track to pursuing God, I was kind of hoping like maybe one of these relationships would pan out in the process or something.
Yeah.
And so I remember kind of being between the two, and both of them were just not giving me what I wanted. And I remember just like complaining to her, and she knew that I was on this journey, and she was like, Natalie, what do you even want? And I was like, what do you mean? And she was like, well, you know, you're doing this Bible thing, like, what do you want?
Wow.
Because this isn't fitting. And I was like, yeah, you're right. Like, I just want God. And so
wow,
it was kind of interesting coming from her. I didn't expect that, but she just was like, I think you just need to do the God thing. Like, that's what you want. She was actually the one who said that.
That's so awesome.
She's like, what do you want? I'm like, I don't know. And she was like, I think
Cue notebook.
Yeah. I don't know what I want. And she was like, I think you just need to do the God thing.
Yeah.
Because,
come on, God thing.
Yeah. Because she just knew. And again, she was the one who saw me at my worst and cared enough to tell me that I was at my worst. Yeah. And then she saw what was helping me. And even though she didn't believe in it in the same way, she cared enough about me to tell me, like, no, you need to do this.
Wow. That's beautiful.
Yeah, she was actually at my baptism too.
Aww.
Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah, it was
gosh.
beautiful. I love her.
That is so beautiful that you had that friend to, I love what you said, even though she didn't believe in the same way, she could see what you wanted.
Yeah.
You know, and that's a friendship that is literally invaluable.
Yeah.
So that's beautiful. What happened then? So you went through chemical recovery and you eventually decided to get baptized.
Yeah.
Did you do anything else to be free from the addiction, or did that completely help your addiction, or how did that work?
I think I'm pretty fortunate to where it did. You know, I know not everyone has the same luxury. You know, I didn't really use things that specifically sent, you know, my body into this crazy withdrawal where I needed to be hospitalized or anything, you know. I didn't drink alcohol to that level. Marijuana doesn't really do that, you know. I mean, you definitely will withdraw, but it's not to that degree. And so, yeah, I'm very fortunate. I know that there's people who, you know, need to go through a whole treatment and everything.
Even with God.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
They need that. And so I didn't need that. I did spend a lot of time in that chemical recovery ministry, I will say. I spent a lot of time in there, and I kind of went underneath the girl who led it at the time. I put myself underneath her wing. And, and it's funny because she would always tell me, you're the poster child for this ministry. But truly, like, I went into the ministry, like, the rule is you're not supposed to use when you're in there. I went in using still. Like, that's just who I am. Unfortunately, I push the limits. I find the loopholes. And but I remember, I think it's still like a daily decision. Obviously I got baptized and I committed to Jesus. So I have his spirit, which I think is incredibly helpful. I don't think I could do it without having his spirit.
Absolutely not.
but it still does take decisions. I remember I got baptized at 18. So I turned 21 as a Christian who had already vowed. I don't say that everyone needs to do this, but I had vowed to God to not drink ever again.
Wow.
Which the Bible says don't swear to God for a reason. Or don't make oaths you can't keep or anything. But I turned 21 and I remember struggling with that oath and being like, I know I could just do it casually. I know I could. But I was like, at this point I made an oath, so I can't break that. Can't do that. So even though I'm older and more mature and maybe I could, drink, or I definitely, wouldn't use drugs. But even though I could, I don't, because I do know this is in my personality. Absolutely. I have an addictive personality. It runs in my family. I got the gene, And so I do think it's a decision all the time to just obey God, honestly. I did the healing that was needed to realize all the pain that I caused myself and other people in my using, which I think it was the other people part that really broke me, and just thinking of the worst things I've done, the things I'm most ashamed of, to think that those things happened while I was under the influence, is just, or, under the influence or fiending for something, So I think that was kind of enough to be oh yeah, this isn't great. The tricks that the chemicals play on your brain are this is great. You're going to love this. This is what you need. But realizing it wasn't, I think, was really helpful. But I would say the thing that I just kept doing is just a continued commitment to make the decision to not turn to those things, which again, I'm lucky. I say I'm an addict because I know if I did those things, I'd fall into the same trap. But I know that there's other people who have a different degree of their addiction, and it's probably, they probably need something a little bit different than just make the decision not to, which in other things of my life, I do need a little more. There's other areas of my life that I can't just say, make the decision not to, I need to create boundaries in my life so that I'm not playing with fire.
No, that's super key. And I was a person who in my life played with fire a lot.
Oh yeah, loved it.
And so I got to cut off everything. If something is going to cause you to sin, cut it off.
Definitely.
So I can totally relate to that. I love how you mentioned earlier about the chemical recovery ministry and how it really caused you to look at the quote unquote happiest moments of your life with true sobriety. A lot of times we can romanticize these events, and there was a certain aspect that was fun. I look back at my previous life before God and I'm like, it was glamorous. It was fun. I had access. I had this, I had that. I can be honest about those things while at the same time realizing actually what was really happening was that all of these great times led to the lowest times, to the most damage to myself and others. And I think that's really key to put yourself in a situation where you can look at your life in a sober way.
Yeah.
To get sober then.
Yeah.
To encourage you to get
Absolutely.
sober, right? To help you get sober. So that's amazing. What does your life look like now? Because I know you don't live that way anymore. So, I mean, you talked a little bit about your repentance, but take us through your daily, like.
Oh, sure. I do want to add one thing, though. When you said cut off, it made me remember, I actually, around my use and changing, I did need to lose some friends. Actually my closest ones.
Aww,
which
is hard.
It was hard, but but I used with them. That was what we did. And it was funny because while we were using, there were a lot of moments where they were very protective of me and they didn't want me to use. And then once I told them I was not going to use anymore, they were like, what's wrong with you? And I was like, what happened to like you wanting me to not use? But so anyways, that was definitely a boundary I had to make, which could definitely be uncomfortable, but yeah, my life now, well, it's funny, it's full circle. I had wanted to always, kind of do something in the mental health fields. And before I was, a Christian, and then becoming a Christian, I kind of took a detour with my dreams and tried to figure some stuff out. I'm naturally a people pleaser, so I think that influenced a lot of, different decisions I made. But now I'm actually in school to be a social worker, so I could do therapy, which I'm really excited about. Yeah, and so right now, like, honestly, I can't even say I'm probably in the best place with God that I've ever been in, if I'm totally honest. But I have done a lot of like more healing and more introspective work and more honestly thinking of myself in a sober way. I think even when you're not using anymore and you're physically sober, you can still mentally be a little delulu.
Yeah. I think that's true. We lie to ourselves more than we lie to other people.
And so I think that, just, digging into my childhood and my past and certain things, like I've had to do some more of that work recently, like within the last 2 years, to really reach a place where I am now, where like I can honestly say I'm only here for God, like not for anyone or anything else. Because I think that kind of I got lost along the way with that. With my people pleasing tendencies. But I think taking everything else out of it kind of strips it down to like the raw bones, to where now I'm in a place where I'm like, oh, here's like the raw bones. And it's not super pretty to look at. But at the same time, it's very like a peaceful place. It's a very peaceful place. So I feel very peaceful with God. And I think what you said earlier too about prayers, like I was just talking to someone about this earlier, where I was like, I feel like I don't see the miracles. And she was like, remember the ones that you've already had. And I'm like, you know what? I do that. Like there's prayers God has answered in like really crazy, creative, intense ways that I'll share another time. But like just great things. So I think right now I'm kind of in a place where I've healed a little bit, and I'm kind of, I think, picking myself up from where I've been. But definitely I feel at peace. I feel grateful to be able to pursue this like dream I have for, creating or getting rid of, I guess, stigma within the Christian church around mental health and how people can, and even addiction, and, helping people change in a way that it does meet them where they're at, like God does. Obviously he expects change, but some people like are pushed away if you try to force it overnight, and God didn't do that with me. He took years, months between all these little moments I had. But the only reason I think I'm here right now and have been here, I'm 28 now, so it's been about 10 years, is because God met me where I was at. Wow. Like he didn't force me. I don't think I would have ever made it if he tried. But even if he had, like I maybe would have turned back or ran away. You know what I mean? So I think yeah, I'm excited to be able to kind of pursue that here and help people who do struggle with mental health and have things where they need to be met with where they're at and can't be forced to do something that I think in Christianity we can think this is the right way, this is the right way, this is the right way. Yeah. But God doesn't deal with people like that, you know? So yeah.
Wow, that's beautiful.
Thanks.
That's so beautiful. And you're so good at it. Like every time like, I call Natalie a lot. I'm like, so no. No, just as a friend. But I'm so proud of you. Thanks. And I also went through our chemical recovery ministry, and Natalie was actually the one who helped me. So I am very grateful to her. And you're really out here changing lives. Thanks. So if someone could take one thing away from your testimony, what would it be? What
I would want and hope someone would take away is not to wait for the world to make the decision to commit yourself to God, if that makes sense. Like, you normally don't factor the world. You don't think you factor the world into your equation, but you do.
Yeah.
You know, I was waiting for this guy. If this guy comes, maybe I'll delay the God thing. Or, okay, I can't give up smoking and all this stuff right now. Maybe I'll wait for the God thing, you know, until my friend is like, what do you want? Yeah. And I'm like, oh yeah, the God thing. But I think like, no matter how long you delay it, like half foot in, half foot out, you're just not fully in. And you're not going to experience the happiness that God does have waiting for you, the peace he has waiting for you. It's not going to be this chemical rush. It's not going to be what you think it is, but it's going to be a lasting joy, you know, a lasting peace that he wants to give you. And you're not going to have that if you're still like holding on to something in the world. Yeah. You know? So I would hope that people would see like the pain you feel from the things in the world and the joy you feel from the things in the world are not worth not having God. Like you need him to protect you from the pain in the world and get you through it, because there's still going to be that pain, but you also need him to even experience that joy. Wow. You know? Yeah. So I would hope that someone would just kind of remember from my testimony, like, let me not delay this anymore.
Oh my gosh. I love that, because you never know what's going to happen during the delay. Yeah. Like we're not guaranteed tomorrow, but even if we do have tomorrow, we never know what that low, what that pain, what that damage that we're going to do today is.
Yeah. And I think too, you don't know what's going to happen to other people too. Like because of your delay, like because of the behaviors you do while you're delaying, if that makes sense. Like some of the things that I am most ashamed of, like I mentioned, happened while I already knew the truth, but I wasn't ready to quite give it everything to God. So I went and I engaged in sin, and I hurt people in ways that I really regret, and I wouldn't have if I had just obeyed the first time. You know? Wow. So I get like God has to meet us where we're at, but like we shouldn't delay our response. You know, we should give our
Come on, Natalie.
Like, everything that we can give, we need to give when he calls. You know what I mean? We don't need to delay that response. But if you only have like half of what God needs, like he's willing to take that. You know what I mean? So there is this delicate balance of like, don't delay. There's an urgency, but like God will still meet you where you're at, you know? He wants everything, but he just doesn't care if it's perfect. Yeah. You know?
Oh, that's so beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh, and you're so beautiful.
You're so beautiful.
I loved this interview so much, Natalie. You're amazing. Thanks. Thank you so much for sharing your testimony. Thank you for being here. Yes, this was amazing. If people wanted to find you or get a hold of you, where can they find you?
Probably Instagram. I'm not very active on any other platform. Honestly, I'm not active on posting on Instagram, but I am there a lot on my phone. So it's Miss MISS Natalie Raine, RAYNE. And that's where you can find me on Instagram.
Love that. Love that. And we will put the link in the description with this episode so you can find Natalie there. Sure. Also, if you want to study the Bible, or if you're interested in the chemical recovery ministry that both of us has taken part in, then we would love to talk to you. There is a link in the description for you to set up a Bible study. You can also use that for getting involved with the chemical recovery ministry. So just leave us a note and we will hook you up with that. Also, if you want the God What the Heck devotional, that link is in the description as well. Thank you so much. Subscribe, like, and share. And we'll see you next time. Yay. Bye.
Thanks, Shan.
Good job.
That was great. Thanks.